Okay, so I did my hair and makeup in another video. This is gonna be just me doing my hair and chit-chatting, you know, just like story time. So a little bit about me is I have a son that is 7 years old, and he has a rare genetic disorder called Phelan-McDermid syndrome. He was diagnosed with this whenever he was about 5 years old. But prior to that, he was diagnosed with autism at 24 months. So we kind of knew something was not quite right, because he wasn't talking, and he wasn't really looking us in the eye anymore. About 18 months, he got really sick, and they really couldn't figure out what was going on. They thought he could possibly have a brain tumor, and he had really bad nystagmus, couldn't really stand up, so he was admitted into the hospital, and we did an ear MRI, we did a brain MRI, and then it come to find out that they did an ear CT and saw that he had a lot of debris in his inner ear canal, which was why he had the nystagmus and vertigo, why he couldn't really stand. And so that's when we discovered that he needed tubes, and that's, you know, prior diagnosis and everything. So we leave the hospital and we go home, and we have a consultation with the ENT, and he takes a look at the scans, and he's like, oh yeah, he just needs a set of tubes. You know, I think that'll clear everything up. I think that's why he hasn't been looking at you guys. He hasn't really been able to communicate. You know, he could possibly be delayed because of that. And we're like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. So we set up the appointment to get his tubes, and so my husband and son just came in, so I had to stop recording. But anyways, back to what I was saying. So we get the tubes put in, and we're like, okay, yeah, that's gonna fix everything. You know, he couldn't hear us, and so he's delayed, and you know, we'll just get him caught back up. We proceeded with getting an ABR, which is a hearing test to see, you know, because he was still failing his hearing tests even after the tubes. So we thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe he has some hearing loss. So we did a sedated hearing test where they give you sound waves and then measure it with your brain signals. So we did that, and then we got the results of that, and it turns out that he has perfect hearing. So we're like, okay, so he's just been ignoring us, is what you're telling us. And that he doesn't want to do anything that he doesn't want to do. And that's when we decided that, you know, we should go forward with getting him tested for autism. And generally they don't like to test at, you know, before 3, really. You kind of have to have, you know, extenuating circumstances, but the more that we kind of sat down and realized some of the quirky things that he was doing really did kind of point in the direction of autism, where he was really obsessed with doors. He wanted to open and close them. Instead of playing with toys regularly, he would turn them upside down and kind of spin the wheels. And, you know, we would ask him, you know, go get your cup, or, you know, he just wouldn't, you know, he just wouldn't communicate at all, hardly. And when we took him in to get tested, I mean, he pretty much couldn't do any of the tests. And then he was messing with the door and trying to escape, and he tested, you know, pretty low on age level. I think they were saying like 6-month age range is kind of where he was testing. And all of the repetitive stuff that he was doing, and so that's when we got our official diagnosis, was when he was about 24 months. And then we started all the therapies. We started speech therapy. We started OT, you know, any kind of therapy that we could get our hands on, we were doing it. And then around age 5 is also when he started kind of getting like this autoimmune disorder. He started getting like hives, and he was just getting bouts of strep throat. And that's when we got him, when he was diagnosed with his autoimmune disorder, which is called PANS. And probably when he was like 2 or 3, when we found out he had autism, his pediatrician had submitted paperwork to get him genetically tested. And it took a long time for us to get approval for that. And honestly, the doctor, the geneticist, was kind of, I wasn't there when they did the testing, my husband took them, but basically the geneticist was like, he's got autism, I don't know why you're getting him genetically tested. Basically, we were wasting our time. And my husband was really pissed about that, because, and I was too, because it's not his job to determine, you know, if it's necessary. And you would think a geneticist would want to test everybody. You just never know. And then, you know, we get the results and come to find out he does have a genetic disorder. That's when we found out that he has Phelan-McDermid syndrome. So it was just, so when we had our consultation with the geneticist, you know, we were not very pleased to come talk to him, because he was kind of an asshole, you know, to tell us, why are we bothering with this? You know, this background is annoying. You know, why are we bothering this? You know, your son has autism. It was really quite off-putting, to say the least. So we go in for our appointment, and the counselor was actually, she was very, very sweet and very, very helpful. But we kind of told the geneticist that we didn't appreciate him, you know, telling us that, you know, we were wasting our time, and that, you know, he's got autism, and to move on down the road. And so he apologized to us for saying that, and basically gave us our diagnosis and said, it's very rare, and I don't really know what to tell you. You know, it's so rare that, you know, I don't even have any information on it. So that's when we got connected with our, her daughter was, I think, one of the first ones to get diagnosed with it, and she's probably been the most helpful and got into our Facebook support group, and we've already been to a conference, which is really cool to meet, you know, everybody in the Facebook group. We've only been to one this year. We were supposed to go in July, but because of quarantine, they decided to postpone it, which is definitely good because all of those kids are very susceptible to getting sick. Last year when Talon, last spring, Talon got croup. And, you know, at age 7, you wouldn't really think that's like a big deal, but in a matter of minutes, he went from fine to barely being able to breathe. And we had to go to the hospital, and they were about to intubate him. And so it was a big deal. And then with, you know, COVID right now, you know, that's very scary and puts him, you know, greatly at risk. That, you know, if a little virus croup that babies get could almost take him out. But he's had the flu and, you know, is okay from the flu. So we just have to make sure that we're really doing, you know, everything that we can to, you know, keep our little baby safe. To go into more specifics about him particularly is that he's severe. He was diagnosed, when he got diagnosed with autism, he was diagnosed with severe autism, moderate to severe, but he doesn't physically talk, and because of that, he can't really communicate too much. But when we did a program in Oklahoma through the Arts and Science College of OU, and they had this really good, intense program. And through that program, we discovered that he could talk through a what is called an alternative augmentation communication device, which is it's a whole language we use, and there's several types, but we use what is called LAMP, Words for Life, and that has been a huge blessing, because without that, you know, he can't physically, we wouldn't know what he knows, what is on his little mind. We found out that he has a pretty good little sense of humor, and sometimes the words he uses aren't the way that we would use them, but knowing kind of him, we know what he's trying to say. And you know, it's just a way for him to advocate for himself, and so it really has been a life changer for us and for him. So that's story time, just a little bit about me. I've got a lot more to say and a lot more to tell. So stick around, like, subscribe, and do all the things. Thank you.